A U.S. appeals court has just delivered a massive blow to Donald Trump's signature economic weapon, his global tariffs. In a dramatic 7-4 ruling, judges declared that Trump overstepped his presidential authority when he slapped sweeping import taxes on America's trading partners. But here's the twist. While the court says the tariffs are illegal, they will still remain in place until October 14th, as the fight heads straight toward the U.S. Supreme Court. Was Trump truly protecting American workers, or did he cross the line and abuse his power? Let's break this down. Asterisk. To understand the magnitude of this ruling, we need to rewind. Back in April, Trump launched what he proudly called Liberation Day. It was marketed as a bold new phase of his America First trade agenda. On that day, Trump announced a 10% tariff on nearly all imports coming into the United States, and for countries like China, Mexico, and Canada, nations that Trump accused of unfair trade practices, he pushed the tariffs even higher, branding them as reciprocal tariffs. His justification: he declared a national emergency tied to both America's trade deficit and even drug trafficking across the border. Asterisk. Trump argued these measures would level the playing field, protect American industries, and force foreign governments to treat the U.S. fairly in trade negotiations. His supporters hailed it as another strong move against globalization and weak U.S. policies of the past. But critics immediately raised alarms. They said the president was abusing his power by bypassing Congress, which under the Constitution holds the authority to regulate tariffs and trade. Asterisk. Not surprisingly, lawsuits followed quickly. Businesses, trade groups, and even a coalition of U.S. states challenged Trump's tariffs in federal court. Their main argument was simple: the president had gone too far. They said Trump was misusing the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, also known as IEEPA, a law passed in 1977. This law gives presidents the ability to act quickly in cases of real national emergencies, things like terrorism, hostile foreign governments, or international crises. But opponents argued that Trump's use of IEEPA to justify blanket tariffs on America's closest trading partners had nothing to do with an actual emergency. Asterisk. In May, federal court in New York, the Court of International Trade, agreed. It struck down the tariffs as illegal, ruling that Trump had overstepped his authority. That decision set the stage for the high-profile appeals court battle we saw this week. Asterisk. Now we arrive at the turning point. On Friday, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit issued its decision, a narrow 7-4 ruling. The majority agreed with the lower court, declaring that Trump's sweeping tariffs violated the Constitution's separation of powers. In plain English, the judges said, tariffs of this scale and scope can only be imposed with Congress's approval, not by a president acting alone. Asterisk. One of the most striking aspects of the ruling is how it draws a clear line around presidential power. The court basically told Trump, and any future president, that you cannot simply declare an emergency and use that as a blank check to rewrite America's trade policies. It's a significant precedent that could shape the limits of executive power for years to come. Asterisk. But the court also made one important exception. Even though the tariffs were declared illegal, the judges decided to let them stay in place until October 14th. Why? To give the government time to file an appeal with the U.S. Supreme Court. That means the final word has not been spoken. The ultimate decision could now come from the highest court in the land. Asterisk. As expected, Donald Trump didn't take this quietly. Within hours of the ruling, he blasted the decision in classic Trump style. He called it a total disaster for the country and claimed the judges were acting out of partisan bias. For Trump, the tariffs are not just about economics, they're also a political symbol. He has used them to present himself as the defender of American workers, the man willing to stand up to China, Mexico, and even Canada when others wouldn't. Asterisk. So when a court tells him those tariffs are unconstitutional, Trump sees it as an attack not just on his policies, but on his entire political identity. Expect Trump to use this ruling as fresh ammunition on the campaign trail, framing himself as a fighter against what he calls corrupt institutions that want to stop him from protecting America. Asterisk. But beyond the politics, let's talk about the impact. What does this mean for everyday Americans, businesses, and the economy? Asterisk. First, the uncertainty is enormous. For months, companies have been struggling to adjust supply chains, renegotiate contracts, and absorb higher costs caused by these tariffs. Now, with the court declaring them illegal, but leaving them in place temporarily, businesses are left in limbo. Should they prepare for the tariffs to disappear in October, or should they brace for a Supreme Court showdown that could drag on for months or even years? Second, the ruling doesn't touch all tariffs. It specifically applies to Trump's Liberation Day tariffs under IEEPA. Other tariffs, such as those imposed under Section 232 of US trade law on steel, aluminum, and autos, remain unaffected. That means some industries will continue to face high import costs regardless of how this particular legal battle plays out. Finally, the political and legal precedent is huge. If the Supreme Court upholds this ruling, it could limit the power of future presidents, Republican or Democrat, to impose sweeping trade measures without congressional approval. That would be a seismic shift in how U.S. trade policy is handled going forward. So what happens now? In the short term, the tariffs stay. The Biden administration has until October 14th to decide whether to appeal to the Supreme Court. All signs suggest they will, because allowing the lower court decision to stand could tie the hands of any future president, not just Trump. Meanwhile, Trump will continue to rally his supporters around this issue. He will argue that the courts are undermining his fight to defend American jobs and sovereignty. His opponents, on the other hand, will claim this ruling proves Trump was reckless, abusing power and hurting both the economy and international alliances. This sets the stage for a dramatic Supreme Court battle that could dominate headlines in the months ahead, and with the 2025 political landscape already so heated, the timing could not be more explosive. At the end of the day, this isn't just about tariffs, it's about the very limits of presidential power. Can a president unilaterally declare an emergency and reshape America's economic relationships with the world? Or must such decisions always go through Congress? That's the fundamental question at stake. So what do you think? Was Donald Trump a bold leader defending America's interests, or did he cross the line and abuse presidential power? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your perspective. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because this story is far from over. The next chapter will unfold at the US Supreme Court, and you won't want to miss it.